So my name's Nick. I am basically the whole marketing department at Firefly Studios. We've got Paul Harris playing the game for us today. Paul's our senior producer. So what we're showing you today is one of the very earliest skirmish trail, Crusader trail missions in Stronghold Crusader 2. Paul's playing against the Caliph, who is one of 8 different AI lords in the game. Just like in the original Stronghold Crusader, you'll play against different AI lords. They've each got their own personalities, their own castle designs. Some will be more aggressive than others. You can see him there taunting in the corner of the screen. The Caliph tends to prefer fiery traps for his castle. Other lords might use war dog cages or spike traps. Or pitch ditches, but the Caliph tends to prefer his pitch just because he likes fire, which makes him very powerful against heavily armoured troops who are quite weak against fire. So Paul's just showing you the simple sort of very straightforward Stronghold economy. Anyone that's played a Stronghold game before is very familiar with it. You've got your resource chains, just like in the old city builder simulation games of the 90s. You know, wood cutters will go to the trees, cut down wood, take it back to the woodcutter's hut, take it to the stockpile, and then you can use that wood to build buildings. In the game there's 3 main resources in terms of raw materials. You've got your wood, which you use to build industry buildings, as Paul's doing now. Stone is used to build castle walls, and iron is used to build weapons and armour. So you've got 2 different buildings there. You've got the stockpile to the north and the granary to the south. Granary stores your foods. You need food to keep peasants happy. The happier your peasants are, the more popular you'll be, the more people will come to your castle, the bigger your army can be, the more workers you have. So it's very familiar to people who played a Stronghold game before, sort of in terms of the gameplay setup. But it's not, it's not just the same game. We've got this fantastic community of players who've been with us since, the very first game released in 2001, and we're doing various things to make the game, appeal to them, like adding siege engineers to siege equipment, adding a bit more realism in terms of how the units take down the castle walls. But there's also a load of new stuff in there as well, like we've got a co-op mode, so 2 players can control the same castle. Other things that set the game apart from the original Stronghold include unit abilities. So unlike in the original Stronghold Crusader, where you had maybe just the assassin or the horse archer who had abilities, the assassin could scale castle walls and cloak. The horse archer could, use his arrow to shoot while moving, fire backwards. Now more than half the troops in the game have these special abilities. So Paul can click on the barracks here and show you that the sergeant at arms in the bottom right-hand corner, he can give a boost to nearby troops with his banner. If you go over to the mercenary post, you can see the different Arabic troops in the game. These guys have got the most special abilities. So you've got the oil pot thrower who can fire fiery pots. You've got the healer who can heal troops nearby. The sergeant at arms I told you about before is kind of, the 1 or 2 people you've got on the Crusader side who have these abilities, but on the Arabic side it's a bit more varied. So you've got the whirling dervish who can do a spinning attack, and it's not really about changing the game too much. We're not going sort of the MOBA route of fewer units, more abilities. It's still, hundreds of units on screen, big battles, individual units, no squads. But it's something we're adding to set the game apart from the original Crusader and really build on the sort of, the setup we had there and really kind of add the things that we wanted to add the first time around, but we didn't have the time for. One of the interesting things about Crusader 2 is that we're actually self-publishing the game. So we've decided on, when the game's ready for release, what features go in there, how long we spend on particular parts of the game that we know are very important to the community. So it's all kind of up to us in that regard. So aside from the traditional RTS, sequel extras, so you've got new units, new buildings. Like I said, we've got the ability system for units. There's also a weather system in the game as well. So you have events such as tornado, locust swarm, various other things such as earthquakes and thunderstorms. So these are the ways that, they're kind of modifiers to the match. So you might be playing and you have to kind of keep mindful of these events. They can come up, they can ruin your popularity, so you have to keep an eye on those. And they kind of add something else to the game that kind of sets it apart from the original Crusader and doesn't make it so that we're making the exact same game over again, which is, it's important for us to recapture the gameplay of the original game, but at the same time we want to differentiate a little bit and add new features that, will kind of improve on the foundations for the original game, but not sort of, make it too unfamiliar for people. So Paul set up a defense against the Caliph. Peacetime's about to end now, so what that'll mean is that the Caliph can now attack Paul, and Paul can now attack the Caliph. You can see him taunting there in the corner of the screen. One of the things we want to sort of build on is the sort of AI interactions. So people remember from the original Crusader, AI opponents will taunt you throughout the match. They'll, you know, when they're winning, they'll laugh in your face. When you're winning, they'll kind of, you know, cower and curse your name. There's also a dynamic system for trading and alliances in the game, so you can trade with your AI opponents. The game features up to 8 players in one match, so you can make alliances with one AI lord and then break it later on. And each AI lord has their own mood level, so naturally if you make an alliance with a lord and then betray him later on, he's not going to be very happy about that. But in the same way, if you trade well with a lord and you know, back him up when he needs your help, when he asks for your help, he's more likely to give you backup later on in the game and help you defend your castle. So this is one of the new units of the game. It's the Hussite War Wagon. We tried to keep everything in Stronghold fairly sort of true to life. So this is an actual piece of siege equipment that used to exist at the time. You know, we've tried doing magic before in Stronghold games, but it didn't really work. So this is, you know, this is a traditional Stronghold game. Everything's medieval. There's no magic, no orcs, no elves. It's all, you know, true to life and true to how you know, sieges used to work in the medieval times, and you know how that all actually used to play out. So Paul's moving his pikemen up there to defend his economy. One of the most important parts of the game is your economy, and you know, if you destroy someone else's economy, it can be another way to win the match rather than just going straight in the door and knocking down their castle walls. We want to give players as many options as possible, so say if you rush in a load of slaves and burn down their farmlands, that's a viable strategy. If you do that, their popularity will go down, they'll have less peasants, less troops for their army. Another strategy is to catapult diseased animals into their castle, so you can spread disease and win that way. But of course, as Paul's kind of building up a force now, you can just go through the front door and knock down their walls and, you know, launch a siege traditionally. As is, you know, fairly common in Stronghold games, some of the economy is external to your castle, so you can see on the top of the hill, the iron's up there, so Paul has to defend that quite well, and the Caliph's already sending his attack through there, so he'll have to defend his peasants up there, otherwise they'll be taken out. We've got an estate system in the game as well, so you have an estate, and in your estate you can build your castle however you like. Paul's lined up his walls there, built them into the mountainside and to the edge of the map, so the Caliph can't come around and attack there. And outside of this estate area, it's the neutral estate. So although you can't build castle walls and normal buildings, you can build siege camps. So what the Caliph will do in a bit here was he'll build a siege camp in his sort of forward base and launch attacks from there. So as you can see, the slaves are a popular method of attack, and we've got a slave driver in there giving a boost to the surrounding units. So Paul's only on day 9 of the game, and the Caliph's already starting to attack him. As you can see, he's set up a forward attacking base in the form of a siege camp. So the Caliph's placed that siege camp on a neutral estate. He can build siege equipment from there. He can launch attacks from there. He can build, you know, a sort of, you know, spawn siege equipment fairly close to Paul's base, but not within his estate. So one of the most important parts of any siege is defending your siege equipment. And as you can see, the Caliph's got a fair number of troops. They're kind of harassing Paul's economy, killing his peasants as they go up to retrieve iron. But Paul's going to try and exploit the lack of defense on the part of the siege equipment, because the slaves are quite fast units, so if you order them to attack, they'll run away fairly quickly. Hopefully leaving the siege equipment, you know, undefended at the back. So one of the most important things for us in making a new 3D Stronghold game is generally making it feel as AAA and as, you know, as full featured as possible. we've implemented many features to make it feel like the original Crusader, but one of the things about the original game is that it was very fast-paced, so you can see the attacks happen quite quickly. And a lot of people say to us, please make a new 2D Stronghold. And although we'd love to do that, it would mean that we couldn't have Havoc physics for the wall system, which castle walls were kind of made for in the first place. So you can see there, classic strategy of sending in horse archers. Paul's defended his castle well with fire though, which is a good strategy for him, and he's taken out the siege equipment by going around the back and taking it out when it's been undefended. And he's successful, although his wall's been taken down, he successfully managed to repel the Caliph's attack. So in terms of the unit split in the game, you have your Arabic units and your Crusader units. Arabic units are recruited purely through gold, so they're quite good to use if you're being attacked and you need troops quickly. But the Crusader units are a bit more sort of your long-term strategy. They require air weapons and armor, so you need resource chains to support those kind of things. But generally speaking, they're better equipped, they're stronger, they might be a little bit more slow, but they're very more, they're a lot more sort of well defended than their sort of Arabic counterparts, which are more fast and more sort of hit and run in their strategy. So you can see a few of the new types of siege equipment there. We've got the classic catapults, mantlets, but we've also got a few new units such as the War Wolf, which is kind of a very expensive, large super catapult. And then we've got the Hussite War Wagon, as I said earlier. And then you've got your classic ballista, battering rams, and all the kind of, the classic stronghold / medieval units. In the original game, a popular strategy was to use hundreds and hundreds of horse archers to sort of harass the enemy, and although the original Crusader was a great game, it had a few sort of exploits in that regard. Assassins were very powerful, horse archers were not only the fastest unit in the game, but they could also fire backwards while moving, so it made them sort of, one of the most effective harassing forces in the game. And one of the ways we've kind of countered that this game is by introducing sort of counters for each unit. So the horse archer can now be countered by the Sassanid knight, who has the ability to charge. But in the same respect, the Sassanid knight can be countered if he charges on a line of pikemen who have used their ability to dig their pikes into the ground and form a defensive line. He'll be dealt extra damage and be killed very quickly. So it's all about introducing counters. Like you can see the slaves there, they're great for rushing in and attacking the opponent, but if you use a whirling dervish and you use his sort of spinning attack, you can take out a squad of slaves very quickly. But in the same regard, the whirling dervish, if you send him in against a load of heavily armoured troops such as the pikemen or the swordsmen, he's not going to do much damage because his swords are just going to hit, rebound off all the heavy armour that those troops are wearing. But in the same regard, heavily armoured units don't do well with fire, so if you have a load of swordsmen or pikemen coming towards you, if you employ pitch traps or oil pot throwers, there's a counter for that. So there's no one unit in the game that is too powerful, and although people love the original Crusader, it's one of those things that we wanted to improve on all aspects of the game and not just make the same game again. So it's the countering system for units and their abilities is one of the ways we've kind of stayed true to the original Crusader, but also fixed the problems that game had in terms of balancing and in terms of multiplayer, because multiplayer is where really people get the most enjoyment out of and the most longevity out of the game. And that's, although the game will have a single player campaign, skirmish mode really is our focus, and the Crusader trail as well. The skirmish play and the multiplayer are really at the heart of the game. So as I said earlier, each AI opponent will have their own unique castle designs, their own sort of strengths and weaknesses. The Caliph's castle looks fairly simple, but as Paul will find out soon, he's got some sneaky traps in there to set his troops on fire. The Caliph is all about the fire. He loves fire. He loves employing traps that use fire, and he loves units that use fire as well. Each AI lord will have their own preferences when it comes to troop types. For instance, the Wolf loves really heavily armoured, slower units. The Caliph loves units that can use fire, so oil pot throwers. There's another character called the Slave King who prefers slave drivers and slaves and likes to rush you early on. So each AI lord has their own sort of, their own preferences when it comes to troops. Another benefit of self-publishing means that we can spend extra time on certain features in the game. So as you can see, we've got formations in there. One of the changes from the original Crusader is that when a unit will go and attack castle wall, in the original game he would just take out his sword and start hacking the wall down with his sword. Now you can see that the troops will actually take out tools and dismantle the walls. And it's one of those things that we could make it so that troops aren't able to take down castle walls, but that would mean that if you have no siege equipment left, you have no form of attack. So it's one of the ways we compromise and add the realism that fans of the city builder and the simulation games want, but also at the same time make it fun in terms of gameplay and make it work. But as Paul will demonstrate now, the real way to take down a castle wall is by launching large boulders at it, and he's doing that now with the catapult. So as you can see, Paul is kind of concentrating all his swordsmen on one part of the wall to create a breach. And then the objective of the game in traditional skirmish mode, although there'll be other modes in the game, is to take out the enemy lord. So in this case, Paul has to defeat the Caliph. He has to kill the Caliph. Once the Caliph is dead, he'll win the match. So the Caliph's quite a powerful unit. Your lord unit is going to be powerful. But if you beat him, you essentially win the match. So as you can see, the walls are actually pathways, so there are stairs that players can go up, players can walk around and over gatehouses. The pathfinding in the game is quite complex in this regard, because you have different paths running over each other. The Caliph likes to use fire, as you can see, which is a great defense against Paul's swordsman. And it'll also use the walls to escape Paul's swordsman and try and get away. The Caliph's quite a maniacal character. As you can see here, he's made the decision to essentially sacrifice his castle. Given the number of Paul's units that are on the walls and outside, he's kind of made the decision to burn down his granary and his inner castle to steal victory from Paul here. Like, as with all Stronghold games, Stronghold Crusader 2 is a hard game. It's not the easiest one in the world. But we take pride in that. I mean, it's part of the Stronghold DNA, and it means that kind of differentiates us a little bit from other RTSs where it's a bit more straightforward and the game's a bit more simple in terms of your objectives and how you win. The game will feature a tutorial campaign, so people that found the Stronghold games too difficult in the past can actually teach themselves the basics of the game and learn that way. But the real test after people have completed the story campaigns, which really teach you the basics, is the skirmish mode, is the Crusader Trails, and everything about that. So the Caliph's castle there, as you can see, has been pretty much decimated by the fire. Fire spreads in the game as well, so you want to put lots of wells near your buildings. As I said earlier, there are many different strategies for taking out an enemy castle. The main one really is to destroy a wall, but you can also burn down farmlands, spread disease. As you can see, fire is very almost contagious in the way it can sort of spread between buildings. And the issue as well is that it's interesting because in sort of simulation strategy games, people like to build their buildings directly next to each other to create the most sort of efficient castle economy. But the sort of the drawback of that is that set fire to one building and it will spread to others. So you kind of have to think about your building placement in terms of how it will respond to an attack as well as how it will function in an economy. So Paul's waited here until the fire has sort of died down, because swordsmen, Crusader swordsmen, pikemen, Templars, they're all fantastic units and they're all really powerful, but it does however mean that fire is an issue when you're covered in armour. and that's kind of their weakness, really, because they're very expensive units, so they're very powerful in the game. But as soon as a load of swordsmen walk through fire, it's it's never going to be good for them. And they can sort of pass through a small area of fire, but get them trying to take down a castle wall, and in the same place for very long, and soon that heavy armor will be a hindrance rather than a benefit for them. As you can see there, the Caliph's castle has now been destroyed. Paul has won, and his Crusader swordsmen are looking very smug with themselves. And after the game, there were plenty of stats for people that want to try out, try and improve their general performance in the game, try and see where they start selling gold a lot, where they're maybe where their strategy went wrong, and maybe try and improve for next time. So that's kind of our first look at the Crusader Trail, very early mission for the game. Crusader 2 will be out on September 2nd on Steam, be available as a box in Germany, and yeah, we can't wait for the world to play the game.